So the title of this article that I'm working on is called Navajo Patriarchy in a 21st Century World. My name is Lloyd Lee. I'm Associate Professor in the Native American Studies Department at the University of New Mexico. So let me go ahead and get started. The book, Dene Masculinities, Conceptualizations and Reflections, examines Navajo masculinities and provides a foundation and understanding of a non-Western and indigenous psychology of masculinity. It analyzes the history of Dene masculinities and the cultural ethos of the ideal Dene male. While the text is one of the first to investigate Navajo masculinities, it does not interrogate Navajo patriarchy. For this article, Navajo patriarchy will be defined as 1. A social system in which power is held by Dene men through cultural norms and customs that favor men and withhold opportunity from Dene women. And 2. Dene men in power. In connection to patriarchy, the concept of power has to be analyzed and discussed. This analysis on power will be examined through Western and Navajo lenses. Power in Western thought is the following: the possession of control or command over others, authority. Power in a Navajo lens is through a foundational image based on spiritual, common, social, and physical elements. Each Navajo person is made up of 4 distinct elements. These elements are 1, of a person's spiritual appearance, 2, the, quote, normal way a person feels and acts, 3, a person's interaction with all living entities, and 4, the physical appearance of a person. This foundational image situates Navajo male power in the zones of common physical, social, and spiritual areas. Western ideologies, ways, attitudes, behaviors, beliefs, and values impact how Navajo men exercise power. Western scholars, intellectuals, philosophers, sociologists, and anthropologists such as John R.P. French, Bertram Raven, Garth Morgan, Laura K. Guerrero, Peter A. Anderson, Keith Dowden, Antonio Gramsci, Michel Foucault, Stuart Clegg, Gene Sharp, and J. Key Galbraith have interrogated power. Their perspectives focus on how power is used to make social actions possible, as well as constraining or preventing the actions. For Navajo people, power is understood through the holy people. The Dene taught the Navajo people the knowledge needed to live on the earth and in the universes. This knowledge is power and energy. The Dene people have access to it through the holy people. However, human beings do not own it. So for Navajo, their view of power is distinctive from Western concepts. This difference does not mean Navajo people are not a part of understanding how power is used to make social actions possible among human beings. In the social element of the Dene foundational image, men and women interact with the world, such as with human beings, mountains, rivers, animals, plants, beliefs, and values, and this interaction situates a person's personality. A person's personality is a continuing process because of each interaction in life. Men and women have to be careful because each person can suffer and venture into harmful areas. The social element of the Dene foundational image is vulnerable. This vulnerability is affected by patriarchy and power. I grew up with my parents as well as my relatives on my mother's side. My mom, aunts, cousins, and my extended family taught me much about Navajo way of life. One thing I learned is how strong the women are in my mom's extended family. The men in her family respect the women and share responsibility for sustaining families and homes. While disagreements and differences do occur, men and women work together to ensure their families and homes deal with and overcome life's challenges. I observe this and recognize my responsibility to my parents, extended family, and relatives. I show my appreciation, love, and respect for everyone. This was taught to me through my family. For the most part, power and patriarchy was absent in my early life. I did not see it though in the schools I attended. I saw it with teachers, administrators, and with other students. Some students made fun of me because of my Native heritage, wearing glasses, and my shyness. While I did not see this as patriarchy or power at the time, I recognized the wrongness and how it made me feel. When I got to high school and college, I learned about patriarchy and power. I noticed more about the contradictions in life and where power was situated. I learned I had certain privileges being a man and women were denied opportunities and authority. This observation continued as I started teaching secondary education, attending graduate school, and becoming a professor. Patriarchy is not new or Western-induced for Navajo families and communities. However, decision-making, authority, and power was always shared between the different genders. Navajo families and communities were egalitarian. Men, women, third, and fourth genders shared responsibilities and decision-making authority. No one person or group had dominance over individuals and families. In the 19th century, egalitarianism eroded as the American invasion into Navajo land and the disruption of families and communities was constant and traumatic. In the 21st century, Dene male dominance is evident in different social spaces on the Navajo Nation. The meaning and understanding of a Dene man has significantly changed. A Hastin, Dene man in the 21st century, lives in a patriarchal world internationally, nationally, and on the Navajo Nation. One of the differences is how Dene men withhold opportunity, decision-making authority, and power from Dene women in their families, communities, and on the Navajo Nation. Navajo men protect their power and authority by declaring certain Navajo social spaces as male-oriented and traditional, even though that was never the case. Navajo women have held vital roles in Navajo communities as mothers and grandmothers. Women are honored and respected as mothers and nurturers who bring life into the world and provide for their children and guide them. Women are the strength and stability in families and communities. Women are always viewed as partners in life, in leadership, in decision-making, and in authority. Women in the 21st century, however, have been devalued of their roles as mothers, grandmothers, and leaders. Dene men have fenced in their power and authority in social spaces. This article will examine Navajo patriarchy in government, politics, leadership, ceremonies, music, sports, the home, relationships, and conclude with a discussion on the implications for Navajo families, communities, and the Navajo Nation. So this is my hypothesis that I put forth in this article. So start with government, politics, and leadership. Navajo government, politics, and leadership are on the front page of the Navajo Times in almost every issue. For many of the stories, the focus is on chapter houses, the council chambers, the president and vice president, and school boards. Each one of these institutions is building and sustaining Navajo communities and the Navajo Nation. Men and women work in each of these institutions. In many cases, women outnumber men and do a good amount of the hard work to maintain and sustain the Navajo government. While this may be the case for the most part, Navajo men are in leadership positions in the government and in politics. For example, in the past, the chairman of the council, and later the president or vice president of the Navajo Nation has been a man. No woman has ever been elected to the position of tribal council chair, president, and vice president of the Navajo Nation. However, women have been elected to council delegate and school board member positions. They also serve in management. For instance, 10 of the current president's cabinet are women, including the Attorney General and the Executive Directors for the Division of Natural Resources, General Services, Social Services, and Human Resources. While women outnumber men in many positions within Navajo government, politics, and leadership, Navajo men maintain decision-making control. These decision-making positions include the President, Vice President, and the Speaker of the Navajo Nation Council. Since the creation of the Navajo tribal government, the chairman of the council from 1923 to 1991 have all been men, including Chi Dodge, Jacob C. Morgan, Sam Akia, Paul Jones, Raymond Nakai, Peter McDonald, Peterson Zaw, and Leonard Haskey. In 1989, the council amended the Navajo government to create an executive branch and separate powers between the executive, legislative, and judicial branches. Beginning in 1991, the president of the Navajo Nation has been a man, including Peterson Zaw, Albert Hale, Thomas City, Milton Bluehouse Sr., Kelsey Begay, Joe Shirley Jr., Ben Shelley, and Russell Begay. The Speaker of the Navajo Council has also been a man since 1995, including Nelson Gorman Jr., Kelsey Begay, Edward T. Begay, Lawrence T. Morgan, Johnny Nays, and Lorenzo Bates. The council delegates choose the Speaker of the Council. The Navajo Nation is one of the few Native nations in the United States with its own Supreme Court. It was established in 1985. Since its inception, there have been 3 women chosen as the Chief Justice of the Navajo Nation Supreme Court: Claudine Bates, author, Lorraine B. Ferguson as an acting Chief Justice, and recently Joanne Bitzili Jane was appointed in 2018. Tom So, Homer Bluehouse, Robert Yazzie, Herb Yazzie, Alan Sloan, Thomas J. Holgate have served as the Chief Justice or Acting Chief Justice. The Chief Justice is selected by the President and confirmed by the Council. All of these positions in Navajo government, politics, and leadership are predominantly men. The question becomes, why is this the case? Is this tradition? Is this due to education? Is this because men have more opportunities than women? Is it because of the way society is at the moment? These questions and the many more need to be answered to rectify the conditions on the Navajo Nation as it relates to the way of life and traditions. Like many Native communities, Navajo has been egalitarian with men, women, third gender, fourth gender, and children having an equal responsibility to sustaining their families and communities. This system of responsibility does not equate one gender greater than the other or one gender as better, but rather the need for all to ensure happiness and wellness. Why does Navajo patriarchy exist in spaces like government, politics, and leadership? One factor is the adoption of a Euro-American ideology of individualism in the attitude and behavior among Dene men. Individualism is the pursuit of individual rather than common or collective interests, and the principle or habit of independent thought or action. Navajo life 250 plus years ago was collective. However, individuality was accepted. Navajo community goals were paramount to individual wants. Dene men had roles and responsibilities to fulfill to sustain the community. Men, women, and children worked to plant and harvest crops, herd sheep, hunt, build shelters, and ensure the continuation of families and communities. A Navajo man's individuality is expressed through the extended family and community. In other words, men, women, and children are equal and linked. For many Dene men in the 21st century, they focus on their individual wants and needs. They work primarily for themselves and their immediate family. Individualism did not just happen to Dene men. American thought, values, behaviors, and attitudes influenced it for several generations. Anthropologist Clyde Kluckhohn in the 1940s observed how American individualism created disharmony and dislike in Navajo communities. He wrote, quote, "The introduction of the white idea of individualism without the checks and balances that accompany it leads to the failure of collective or cooperative action of every sort. The substitution of paid labor for reciprocal services is not in and of itself a bad thing, but there is no commensurate growth of the white idea of individual responsibility. There tends to be a distortion of the whole cultural structure, which makes it difficult to preserve harmonious personal relationships and satisfying emotional adjustments. Widespread exercise of escape mechanisms, especially alcohol, is the primary symptom of the resultant friction and decay." End of quote. According to Kluckhohn, moral decay in Navajo communities was happening and Dene values was greatly affected. Many Dene men were indoctrinated with an attitude an individual works to succeed at the expense of family, friends, and others. The focus changed from working for the extended family and the community's prosperity to working for the immediate family's needs and wants. In the past, Dene men represented the community's prosperity and wellness rather than the individual accomplishments. The reverse is happening. Ceremonies. A second social space where patriarchy is present is in healing ceremonies. Dene men and women participate in healing ceremonies. The majority of the time, a man leads and conducts the healing ceremony, such as a blessing way. Many families accept this practice because of tradition. Traditionally, a man is the singer, healer, and conductor of healing ceremonies. The person conducting the healing ceremony is called a hatatli, singer, healer. The healing ceremony is holistic and focuses on restoring balance and harmony to the patient. The hatatli uses the energy and power of the holy people. Spoken words, songs, acts, herbs, and paraphernalia are utilized in a healing ceremony. Along with hatatlis, diagnosticians are also part of the healing ceremonies. These individuals diagnose the cause of an illness or unwellness so a remedy can be provided. While men and women can be a diagnostician, a man is usually a hatatli. One of the main reasons a man is considered instead of women when it comes to conducting a healing ceremony is tied to the creation narratives. In the third world, men and women entities lived apart for a while, and it created much disharmony and misery in both camps. They finally agreed to come back together to ensure the survival of all. According to the narratives, a decision was made to delegate male entities with ceremonial and political power. Future roles and responsibilities for male and female entities were also decided. Female entities were delegated the domestic realm. Traditionally, when a patient requests a ceremony to be conducted, it is conducted in a reciprocal fashion. The ceremony is usually conducted at the family's hogan, and the family prepares food and the necessary items. The hatatli conducts the ceremony. No payment was required or requested. However, the family and patient provided food, clothing, and other items to the medicine man and the people attending. Beginning in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, medicine men started to request currency in the form of cash or payment. Since then, many medicine men required payment similar to a patient visiting a doctor. After the livestock reduction in the 1930s and 40s, many Dene men and families searched for a livelihood through wage labor. Historian Colleen O'Neill writes of how men and women met their household obligations through wage labor. Quote, resisting permanent relocation and refusing to conform to the BIA's expectations, Navajos made a place for themselves in the southwestern labor market. They participated in that market, but did not embrace the assimilation goals the BIA officials and some employers promoted. Navajos did learn the reservation to find jobs, but for many, like the Keys, she's referencing the family that she was talking about, that work provided them with the resources they needed to persevere rather than replace their reservation households. End of quote. Many Dene men focus on a wage-centric way of life where cultural activities and the teaching of cultural knowledge subsidized to working and not being at home most of the time. Many Dene men supported their family mostly through the income they earned from the job. They shifted from a Dene-centric thought to work-centered. This shift impacted how medicine men thought about the healing ceremonies and what they provided for families and communities. It was no longer thought of as a service to the community, but rather as a doctor to a patient interaction. Okay, I'm just going to read a few highlights from each of these sections. I don't want to read all of it. A third social space where Navajo Patriarchy exercises in the music and sports world. Since a hatatli is thought to be a man, singing and chanting in the Dene language is part of the ceremony, and therefore equated to tradition and sounding Dene. Some people view authentic and traditional Dene as a Dene man singing in a ceremony at a social dance and country music songs. The Navajo music world is thought of as a male space and, quote, truer, end of quote, to a Dene way of life. If you're a Dene man who sings ceremonial songs or country music, you are not second-guessed, ridiculed, criticized, or doubted for the most part. Dene men are accepted in the Navajo music world. Christina Jacobson, in her book, The Sound of Navajo Country Music, Language, and Dene Belonging, examined Navajo country music and specifically how Navajo identity aligns with country music, a reservation accent, and a male singing voice. She writes, quote, when the late Navajo comedian and musician Vincent Craig started recording in the 1980s, he codified the Chapter House band song, perhaps using a phrase that was already in circulation at the time, with the autopoetic descriptor JJJ. JJJ, also called the Chapter House beat, became a sonic shorthand for the Chapter House bands and their unique unpolished song. JJJ can be spoken typically in a low monotone voice in the way Vincent Craig did it, or played as my bandmates sometimes did for humorous effect during rehearsals or on electric guitar, strings muted with a pick, repeatedly striking the same note, emulating the chunky, dry guitar associated with the Chapter House beat. End of quote. According to Jacobson, the JJJ is a beat representative of Chapter House band songs. The beat helps the songs be danceable. A Dene man singing country music is the norm and standard, and everything else is not authentic Dene. In contrast, Jacobson interviewed Chucky Begay, a female musician, band leader, and lead singer. Begay recalled to Jacobson a comment on a website promoting Navajo bands. The comment read, quote, Chuck Begay does not belong in music. Native women don't belong in music. End of quote. According to some Dene women do not belong in music. In the Navajo music world, playing country music is Navajo social authenticity, while experimentation or variation in music roles and singing is dismissed as not Dene. As Jacobson wrote, refusing to sound Navajo, as the KTNN DJ puts it, makes bands vulnerable to broader critiques about place-based, gendered, and indigenous identity. End of quote. Let me go to the next one. The home. Some Dene men are competitive and chauvinistic and do not want their wives, girlfriends, or women to be in a higher status position than them. Dene women are relegated to the domestic realm. History, however, demonstrates gender has nothing to do with experience, cultural knowledge, treatment, and responsibility. In the Navajo way of life, women are decision makers in the home environment. In Dene philosophy, females are partners. Women are not less than or inferior to men. However, the home environment is the space where Navajo patriarchy is present. One way this is demonstrated is through domestic violence and alcohol and drug abuse. Some Dene men do take drugs and drink alcohol. One factor is to escape the daily grind of life. Alcohol and drug use is not a recent phenomenon. Frank Mitchell, a Navajo Blessing Way singer, described how alcohol was part of the male activity in the early 1900s. Quote, afterwards we got to talking and they said that just a short distance back on the road was a saloon. You see, it was off the reservation. Somebody said, let's go over there and get something to drink and have a little fun. When that was suggested, of course, a lot of them wanted to go. I was included, so I went over there on foot. It was not very far. We walked over to that saloon to buy something to drink. When we got there, of course, each one bought what he could afford. Some bought small bottles, others got big bottles. I got a gallon jug, a clay one. I got that gallon of whiskey and some small bottles besides. We came back to camp and of course we started drinking and talking and having a good time. We treated one another and kept on all night long. End of quote. It is not uncommon to see Dene men participate in the social setting of alcohol consumption. Several health, medical, and anthropological studies have examined Navajo adolescent behaviors and experiences with drinking alcohol and changes to Navajo communities. Clinical anthropologist Martin D. Topper examined Navajo male adolescents' drinking behavior. He found children are introduced to drinking by the family, and young Dene men drink both for social cohesion and to escape problems. One behavior some young Dene men do to help with family is to participate and support in a healing ceremony. Unfortunately, the way some Dene men do this is by pitching in to buy liquor. Alcohol is not to be present at a healing ceremony. However, it appears drinking has become a way for some Dene men to demonstrate status among their peers. The last space I wanted to talk about was relationships. In my book, Dene Masculinities, I asked 30 Dene men if men respect women. The majority of them said yes. However, it is not as simple as yes or no. Some who do not think men respect women is based on age and generation. Some believe older Dene men are more respectful toward women. Some feel younger Dene men are losing their identity, picking up a new way of life, do not know their relations, and display aggressive behavior toward women. They cite domestic abuse, drug and alcohol use, and overall negative experiences on the reservation. One individual interviewed said some Navajo men are not taught the proper way to treat a woman. He said, quote, some men will respect Navajo women, but there are those who don't because of a lack of understanding of the values of Keh and the clans. If we understand the values of a Dene woman, then the abuse can be lessened. But if we don't teach this to our children, then we will then when will this disrespect of Dene women stop? The woman is the home. She is the one that provides warmth, love, and care. Woman is the childbearer, and for that she is to be revered. She brings life into the world. She brings love and warmth when everything seems bleak. She will restore the beauty in life. But an uneducated man about Dene women will do as he pleases. End of quote. Many Dene men probably share this perspective. However, relationships between men and women are not necessarily harmonious or balanced. Traditionally, Navajo families arranged marriages. The arranged marriage was not necessarily for the benefit of the two individuals, but rather two families, clans, and communities coming together. Many Navajo families do not arrange marriages in the 21st century. Most Navajo men and women date and choose whom they will marry. Some Navajo men believe the loss of cultural teachings leads to problems in relationships. They feel American ideologies, ways, values, attitudes, and behaviors are altered. Traditional Dene perspectives on marriage, and men and women need to learn the responsibilities of being a Dene man and woman. And I'll wrap up with this. Navajo Patriarchy in the 21st century world is where Dene men hold power and authority and withhold opportunity for Dene women. Navajo Patriarchy is widespread. Dene men have power and authority in Navajo government, politics, and leadership. Most Hatatli are men, and many Navajo people expect him to be a man. Many Navajo people expect country music to be sung by Dene men. While girls and boys are successful in basketball, boys and men are expected to be active in rodeo, even though girls and women also participate. Patriarchy is maintained in the home and in relationships. American ideologies and values are evident in Dene men. Some Dene men do not respect Dene women, and this affects each man, their families, and communities. This effect is negative and will continue to maintain and ensure hostile and unhealthy social and political environments. One implication of Navajo Patriarchy is a negative social environment. The balance between men, women, two-spirit persons, and children is lacking, and the harmony that comes from a balanced way of life is not fulfilled. Dene men dominate the social environment through their attitudes and views. They are superior and know what is best when it comes to leadership, government, and politics. While more Dene women work for the Navajo government, Dene men maintain control. Dene women, two-spirit persons, and children are regulated to a lesser stance and have little meaningful impact on decision-making. The second implication is everyone is not a part of building healthier and sustainable Navajo communities. Some people are not given the opportunity to help build better Navajo communities. They are told the work belongs to people who are from the community, or in many cases, they are referring to their leadership, mostly male, or some Navajo government official, predominantly a man. Navajo Patriarchy is an everyday experience and does not help with the building of the Navajo Nation overall. It prevents Navajo people from flourishing, and it stagnates what the Navajo Nation can and should be for all Dene and Native peoples worldwide. I end with a quote from Dene Masculinities. Respect for the female gender is part of the Navajo traditional teachings. You are taught to respect your mothers, sisters, aunts, grandmothers, etc. in Navajo culture because they gave birth to you. And these people, quote, are who you are. End quote. Okay, so it's an article still. I'm still working on the stuff, but I wanted to read this to you because I didn't. I had two presentations today. I'm kind of wiped, so that's why I was reading this. But